They used to say your name with a certain weight. Teachers would mention you to other teachers in hallways, in staff rooms, with that tone reserved for students who were going places. Your parents would tell their friends about your test scores, your reading level, the things you said that seemed too advanced for your age. You collected praise the way other kids collected toys. Gifted. Exceptional. So much potential. The words built a throne beneath you, and now you are sitting in an ordinary life, in an ordinary job, with ordinary problems. And the distance between where you were supposed to be and where you actually are has become a silence you cannot explain to anyone. Because how do you tell people that you peaked at 12? How do you admit that the smartest thing you ever did was being born with a brain that developed slightly faster than the kids around you? You are tired in a way that has nothing to do with sleep, and you have been tired like this for years, not exhausted from doing too much, exhausted from carrying something invisible, the weight of who you were supposed to become, the ghost of potential that was never converted into anything real. You watch people you grew up with, people who were not special, who were not pulled aside and told they were destined for greatness, and they have built lives, actual lives, careers and families and a sense of purpose that does not seem to torture them. You have intelligence. You have always had intelligence, and it has done nothing but make you acutely aware of everything you are failing to do with it. The gift became a debt, and the debt has been compounding interest for decades. There is a specific shame that lives in former gifted children, and it is the shame of fraudulence that runs in reverse. The imposter does not feel they deserve their success. You feel you do not deserve your failure. You were smart. Everyone said so. The test confirmed it. The grades proved it. So the life you are living now must be a mistake. A wrong turn you cannot locate. A single decision that derailed everything. An alternate timeline you slipped into when you were not paying attention. You keep looking for the moment it went wrong. But what if there was no moment? What if the thing that went wrong was the label itself? What if being told you were exceptional was the very thing that made you ordinary? Jung understood that identity is not discovered but constructed, and that the materials used in the construction determine everything that follows. The child who is labeled the smart one does not simply receive information about themselves. They receive a role. A self is assembled around that role the way a house is assembled around a foundation. The child learns that their value lies in their intelligence, which means their value is conditional on performance, which means failure is not just disappointment, but existential threat. Other children are allowed to struggle. Other children are allowed to be bad at things, to flounder, to take years to find their footing. The gifted child is not allowed. Every struggle is a crack in the foundation of their identity. Every failure is evidence that the self they were given is a lie. And so they learn the one lesson that will cripple them for life. Avoid anything that might expose the lie. They stay where they are safe. They choose paths that are beneath their ability because ability that is never tested can never be disproven. They develop a relationship with potential that is almost romantic, keeping it pristine, untouched, protected from the contamination of reality. The potential becomes more valuable than any actual accomplishment could be, because accomplishment is finite and potential is infinite. As long as you never really try, you can never really fail. And as long as you never really fail, the story about your exceptionalism remains intact. This is the trap you have been living inside. The label that was supposed to launch you has been anchoring you. You chose easy courses because hard ones might reveal limits. You avoided competitions because losing would mean you were not what they said you were. You did not pursue the things that excited you, because excitement leads to investment, and investment leads to the possibility of failure. And failure is unsurvivable when your entire identity depends on being exceptional. So you played it safe. You stayed small. You kept the potential intact by never testing it. And now you are decades into a life that was built not on your strengths, but on your fear of discovering their limits. There is another wound beneath this one, and it is perhaps the deeper cut. When you were praised for being smart, you learned that your intelligence was your value, not your kindness, not your humor, not your sensitivity or creativity or capacity for connection, your mind. The rest of you was background noise, pleasant perhaps, but not the reason anyone was interested. And so you developed the mind and neglected everything else. You became lopsided, a creature of cognition and analysis, performance and proof. The other parts of you atrophied in the dark, the parts that could not be measured, the parts that did not produce impressive results on demand. You became a brain with a body attached, and now you are an adult who does not know how to exist in the world as a whole person. Jung would recognize this immediately. He spent his career working with people who had overdeveloped one aspect of themselves at the expense of others. People who had become so identified with their persona, with the role they played for the world, that they had lost contact with everything else they were. The gifted child is perhaps the most tragic example because the overdevelopment happens so early. Before they can choose, before they can question, before they even know that other ways of being valuable exist, they are handed an identity and told it is who they are. The rest of their life becomes a performance of that identity. And performances, no matter how skilled, are exhausting in a way that authentic living is not. The way out is not to recover your potential. The potential was always a fantasy, a projection placed on you by adults who needed you to carry their unlived hopes. The way out is not to finally prove you were as smart as they said. You were exactly as smart as they said, and it did not matter because intelligence without the courage to use it is just a more articulate form of paralysis. The way out is to grieve the self you were supposed to become and will never be. To grieve the childhood you did not have because you were too busy being exceptional. To grieve the parts of yourself you abandoned because they did not fit the role. This grief feels like failure. It feels like giving up. It feels like admitting that the promise was false and the years spent protecting it were wasted. But it is actually the first honest thing you will have done in decades. You are not giving up on yourself. You are giving up on a self that was never yours to begin with. You are releasing an identity that was installed before you could consent to it. And in the space that opens when you finally let it go, something else becomes possible. Something that has been waiting your entire life. Beneath the gifted child is an actual person. Someone with desires that have nothing to do with intelligence. Someone with needs that cannot be met by achievement. Someone who might be good at things that do not earn praise and bad at things that do. And that would be okay, because their worth would not depend on a label given by adults who did not know them at all. This person is not a disappointment. They are a relief. They are the self you get to become when you stop trying to be the self you were told you already were. You were the smart kid. That was the first thing that went wrong. Everything else followed from there. But the kid underneath the label is still there, still waiting to find out who they actually are. And they have been waiting long enough.